Thank you so much. Thank you, James. Thank you, Madam President, for carrying my notebook. Dear Anna, distinguished speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to be here. I'm Jamil Anderlini. I'm the editor-in-chief of Politico in Europe. I have a broken kneecap. I write a lot of mean things about politicians in Brussels. It's a very brutal town, so you take of that what you will. I would just like to add my sincere condolences for the terrible events of the floods in the last couple of days as well. So we're here to talk about investment, to talk about the EIB's role, and where you think Europe is heading, where you think investment in Europe is heading. James Harding and I actually both used to work for a publication called the Financial Times. And when I think about what's happening in the world today, I think about this period from the end of the Cold War, around the fall of the Berlin Wall, for about 30 years. We had this period, this very unique period, I think, in history of the financialization of everything, where you had dictators in Beijing, and you had bankers in Washington, D.C., and everyone was obsessed by GDP growth and financialization. It didn't really matter where you were. And then in the last 5 to 10 years, we've had really the politicization of everything. And I would count myself a leading indicator because I used to work for the Financial Times, and now I work for Politico, so I'm on trend. I just would like to ask you a bit, in the context of the EIB, it's obviously a somewhat political institution from the beginning, but do you feel do you feel that the political winds of the day are pushing your institution and similar institutions to be more political, to follow the political
Well, thank you very much, Jamil, and it's a pleasure to come back to the conference. And of course, I've already expressed publicly my condolences, and my heart is absolutely with the people that are suffering throughout Spain, really, because it has not only been in Valencia, many parts of Spain have been hit. But to come to your question, as financial arm of the European Union, I think the EIB has this very specific symbiotic nature, in the sense that the European Investment Bank is a very large multilateral financial institution with a 600 billion balance sheet, very profitable since its inception, I think very well run, very good risk management mechanisms, delivering for European citizens, but it is also a political institution, a policy institution, I would say, because it needs to drive European policies. And that explains why, going forward, climate change, number one, digitalization, security and defense, supporting the agriculture sector, an impact-based policy outside the EU. We invest around 10% yearly outside the EU. So, it's only natural that both aspects, finance and policy, should come together at the EIB.
When you are looking at those investments outside the EU, how much pressure or kind of interest is there from the rest of the European Union institutions to compete, for example, with China, with its Belt and Road Initiative, to support the global gateway? How much are you kind of looking more towards that more geopolitical?
Well, indeed. I mean, currently I think that the EIB has a very important role to play, together with the family of multilateral development institutions, in this disruptive world that we are living. Really, the global order is changing. We see it, under our eyes. And from this point of view, it is clear that we need to have more impact in our investments outside the EU. That means pursuing European priorities, but also it means getting more for the money that we invest. Let me give you an example. So we are financing large infrastructure projects like trains and metros in Indian cities. Okay, that's a project on the ground. But we also have strategic partnerships. Only this week we signed a partnership with the Worldwide Fund for Nature, precisely to develop nature-based solutions to protect ecosystems. Or we have a strategic alliance with the Vaccine Alliance to provide vaccine production facilities and finance them in Africa. So it is, I think, a very global mandate, which indeed is very much enshrined by Europe's values and priorities, no doubt about it. But may I add, I was listening carefully to the exchange that took place here, and I was thinking back to last week's meetings in Washington, and I was thinking, how would I summarize those discussions, which is encapsulating what has been discussed and also your question to a certain extent. And I'd say there were 3 issues and 2 elephants in the room. 3 issues. First one is the global economy has shown remarkable resilience, but there are very important risks ahead coming from market fragmentation, of course, geopolitical challenges, tensions, and wars. Second issue was climate change and the increasing cost of climate change, which is becoming even uninsurable in some sectors like agriculture. That's an area that I think we have to pay a lot of focus to. And then thirdly, 80 years on after the Bretton Woods institutions were created, how do we build a new global governance, a new financial architecture that responds to today's realities? Those were the 3 key issues. I leave it to you to say, what do you think were the 2 elephants in the room?
China? Well, I don't know, tell me.
I know, come on.
Trump and China.
Well, it's a good summary indeed. Yeah, I would say the elections in the US and the meeting of the BRICS countries that was taking place in parallel to the gatherings in Washington. But you summarized it with 2 words that are really,
I'm an editor, I cut things down. So.
Exactly.
You raised, I think, a very important point. You mentioned, I think something like 50% of your loans are to green industries. You're the first multilateral development institution that doesn't invest in fossil fuels anymore. I'm right, I'm doing your propaganda for you. But we've seen in this latest mandate in Brussels with this last election that the discussion has swung quite dramatically from the new Green Deal, which was really the sort of central feature of Ursula von der Leyen's last mandate, last term, is now, everyone talks about, as you know very well, competitiveness, which we have something signed earlier this year called the Antwerp Declaration, where many, many industries have said they believe in a green future, but it needs to be responsible. We can't have deindustrialization as a result. And so the pendulum has clearly swung back. And I want to ask you, are you being pressured, or are there discussions, since your sort of EIB's reason for being is to support the goals of the European Union, are you now seeing more interest in you investing in more legacy industries? Mm-hmm.
Well, 3 thoughts from my side. First of all, and the floods this week in Spain show that climate change is a reality. It is imposing increasing costs on our economy, so it is a no-brainer that we need to invest in this green transition, invest in resilience, invest in adaptation to climate change, on top of trying to mitigate climate change. And actually, this is not only the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do, because $1 that is invested into adaptation and resilience saves 5 to 7 in damages and repairs, and not to talk about those losses that are not repairable. So from this point of view, I think we have to keep the course and make this green transition a success. And I would add a European success, and that this comes to the point, we need to really articulate a policy path which ensures that the 3 C's of climate, competitiveness, and cohesion, make a successful transition in Europe. And the European Investment Bank is at the heart of it. We're currently more than 50% of our investments inside the EU go to the green transition, and we are investing in the large infrastructure projects. We just signed this week a very large investment in Spain, in the Canary Islands, for a state-of-the-art pumped water electric generation facility, which is going to be instrumental for the resilience of the islands, large infrastructures. We're also investing in the frontline technologies that are going to ensure that we move to a net zero economy in an efficient manner with productivity growth. And we are also investing in highly risky endeavors in many parts of Europe, precisely because that's the role of the bank, to take the risk that the financial sector normally does not take, supporting also the transition of the SMEs. And let me give you two examples, also recent examples. By the way, we are financing securitizations with Santander and many other banks to support green loans to SMEs, to support them in this transition. But the other example, or the other data that I think is quite interesting, we just published an investment survey that shows that more than 60% of European companies are investing in the green transition and more than 70% in digitalization. So I think the private sector is getting on with it. We can have a lot of debates on the political and the policy priorities and the legislation, but the reality, I think, is quite stubborn, and the reality shows that the companies are understanding this is a no-brainer, we need to move ahead.
So some people might have heard me say this before, but I like to refer to Brussels, where I live, as the Silicon Valley of regulation. And as we heard from President of the Parliament, there is a lot of innovation when it comes to regulation, not so much in the implementation and less in actual innovation. So how can EIB and how can other financial institutions, but particularly EIB, how can you foster genuine innovation and put Europe somewhere closer to where America, even China and other places are?
Yeah. So first thing that I will do with the new commissioners, and this is I am really disclosing this because we're in petit comité and there's nobody here that is going to forewarn them. First thing I'm going to give them is a low-hanging fruit of reducing red tape and simplification, because it is clear that we need to, I don't know if it's taking stock, but it's clear that we need to be fast and agile in reducing complexity, and from this point of view, the EIB is the main mandate enforcer from the European budget, and we enforce over 80 mandates. We produce more than 400 reports a year. There is, I think, a lot of low-hanging fruit and a lot to gain in simplifying this to the benefit of the final beneficiaries, in terms of cutting down bureaucracy. This is just an example, but I'm sure there will be many other examples that the Commission is going to surely lead in the next mandate. And Mariette McGuinness is here, so I'm sure she will take this flag and carry it forward wherever she will be in the next mandate also. Second thing that we are doing is responding to this Draghi report and seeing how can we deepen integration of capital markets in Europe. Well, the EIB is in itself a capital markets instrument because we issue European signatures, European bonds to finance European investments. We channel savings to investments, productive investments. So we're working in an action plan to try to foster this capital markets union. And Enrico Letta, who is also here, he's heard me some of the ideas that we're working on, having to do with pumping up the European Tech Champions Initiative, which is mobilizing and trying to nurture the European ecosystem of venture capital, creating an exit fund so that we can also support the exit of initial investors and make sure that European startups can grow and prosper and become large companies in the EU. They don't have to look for the financing outside. We're also trying to see how to gear up the green and digital bond market. There are many initiatives that we're working on, and I think now is the time to try to drive them so that we can mobilize more investment and ensure that ideas, companies, technologies that are born in the EU can remain in the EU. And there are many good companies, ideas, and technologies that are actually developed in the EU. I want to leave you with this very positive message. Actually, the EU is a powerhouse in many areas, and we have a very strong basis on which to build.
I sat next to, last night at dinner, a very interesting, you know who I'm talking about, probably Italian investor, big investor, and I asked him, what do you think the chances? Capital market union, everyone's talking about it now, capital market union, banking union. He said zero chance. So what's your in this next 5 years, what do you think? And I agree with him, by the way. So
Okay.
Having only lived in Brussels for 3 years, but tell me what you think the chances are.
Well, I mean, I've been around, as Anna was saying, for very long. I've been a regulator, I've been at the European level, then a minister at national level. I invested a lot of personal energy in trying to finish the banking union, the capital markets union. And I think there is political momentum. There is unanimity on the side of experts, and there is political momentum. And I'm sure we see it now with the declarations that are being prepared for the European Council. I'm sure that our leaders are going to try to drive this forward and say this is a top priority, let's get it done. Now, since I am no longer around that table, what I'm trying to do is to work bottom up in deploying instruments that can actually facilitate this. I am very much a do person. Let's do it. And so from the perspective of the European Investment Bank, I think we can rally national promotional banks, we can rally financial operators to try to actually get things done, like scaling up venture capital markets, like channeling savings towards productive investment, seeing how to mobilize and crowd in private large institutional investors. So I'm very much on that note, trying to complement whatever comes top down in the next mandate, which I hope is going to be more than 0%, actually.
Hope more than 0, that's good. In the green room before we came out, I had a wonderful, brief but wonderful discussion with Enrico Letta, who also has a very influential, very important report out recently. And I thought he had a suggestion that was just beautiful, in my opinion, in its simplicity. And if I was to summarize as a good journalist, he was talking about rebranding and if I've got it wrong, he can tell you later I got it completely wrong, but what I heard from him was rebranding the Capital Markets Union as the Savings and Investments Union. And as a journalist who has to wade through bureaucraties and eurocraties every day and all these weird slogans and different wording in Europe, I love this idea of just a simple rebrand. When we start to talk about things as they really are rather than in the language of the Brussels bubble, maybe that can help to improve. So what do you think of that, the rebrand? Savings and Investment Union, not Capital Market Union.
Two things. First is I absolutely think that we need to communicate better and we need to bring citizens with us. When we're talking about the climate change and the green transition, when we're talking about financial integration, we need to explain what's in for the citizens and how is this going to improve their lives. Secondly, and you, Enrico, you have to forgive me, I don't think Savings and Investment Union is a sexy headline for citizens to be attracted. So we have to think more about it. Maybe you can help, actually,
that's what I'm good at, yeah.
Jamil, in finding what would be an attractive motto. That's why I'm trying to explain what we want to do from the European Investment Bank in clear ideas like this one, like we want European startups to be able to grow and prosper in Europe. You know, that I think everybody will understand. And we need to think about these kind of ideas or expressions that are really more attractive. I can only agree, but I have not succeeded. And my team here from the IB knows from day one, I've been asking all of us to put our brains together to think about a better expression. In the absence of that, that's why I continue to say Capital Markets Union, but I'll take over, whatever comes.
We'll go back to the drawing board. We can't, I think, end, we've got a couple of minutes, but we can't end without talking about the elephant you mentioned, the orange-haired elephant in the room. What happens if Trump wins next week for EIB, but also more broadly for Europe?
No, but I think the previous discussion here is quite right in saying, no matter what happens, the transatlantic relation is absolutely strategic for Europe. So we have to continue to build a world, which is trying to focus on the elements that tie us and that we have in common with our US partners. And so we will need to work with whatever administration comes. And secondly, and this is a bit more of a personal reflection as a follow-up of the discussions in Washington last week, and I just saw Klaas not here, so I would be interested to hear, Klaas, if you saw things as I have, in terms of the summary. I think it is extremely important that the US understands that the global order that has been running the world since the end of World War II has greatly benefited the US, has greatly benefited the interest of democracy and liberal democracies in the world. And so it's very important to lead discussions that are on what the new global order is going to look like, So institutions, for example, like the World Trade Organization, like the WTO, have been instrumental, in the last years. We have to see what we want to do with these organizations, support, adapt, reform. Likewise, with the Bretton Woods institutions, 80 years on, they have brought growth, prosperity throughout the world, financial stability, and these are key elements, indispensable elements for peace actually. So we need to continue to lead the process and do not just, think inward and think that things are going to be solved and going in the right direction automatically, because I think they will not. But let me leave you with a positive idea. I really want to finish on a positive note. I do think that Europe has a lot to give in building this new global order. I hope that the US will understand that they need to continue to lead the discussions and the world, the discussions that are taking place at the global level. And I am persuaded, that humanity has gone through lots of crises, but we have found a way to move ahead in a positive direction, and I hope that we will continue on that track. From the European Investment Bank, we will do our utmost to contribute to growth, prosperity, stability, and peace. No doubt about it.
Madam President, thank you so much. Wonderful.
Thanks to you. Yes.